Come laugh, learn, and love with us, your hosts, Peter and Theresa Martin. We're going to share stories, insights, everything on how to strengthen your marriage. We're going to have a lot of fun because we've got wisdom to share as long as it's shared with humor and maybe a glass of Italian red. Join us now for the next episode of Love That Lasts.
Welcome to Love That Lasts. We're your hosts, Peter and Theresa Martin. We're grateful to be with you once again over the airwaves, as it were. And we're just blessed. We had such a great time. We don't have a guest for you this time.
Sadly.
But it was fun to be with my brother. And we mentioned at the end of that podcast, I don't know whether it was recorded or not, but we hope that becomes kind of a thing where we have him on more frequently. He's been, I think we said in the podcast, he's been a big part of our marriage. It's fun.
So we don't have a guest. I do have my espresso though.
Oh, lovely. I've had enough for today. And so, yeah, we'll get going. So the reason for the podcast is obviously to talk about marriage, and in particular to find ways, maybe examples, maybe stories, experiences that we've had of how we can better our marriage and have that love that lasts. And one of the things that we talk about when we're preparing a couple, but in our experience was something very valuable, was to recognize that each of us comes into marriage with a certain set of expectations. We don't really know that they're there per se, but they show up quickly, and it becomes one of those things that is very fruitful to acknowledge and then to talk about and say, hey, I think the reason I'm coming at this, or maybe the reason I get upset at this, or the reason that I get down when something happens is because I had this expectation and I didn't know about it. And so it's a healthy experience, or it's a healthy conversation to have between the two of you to say, hey, I didn't realize this, but I think I'm expecting this from marriage. And it's been, in our experience, very fruitful. It's tied into the family of origin discussion. So if you haven't had a chance, go back and listen to that conversation. It's tied in because obviously that's where we first learned about marriage, and that's where our expectations come from.
And expectations, so it's the unmet expectations that can cause your frustration. And sometimes we don't even realize, why am I getting upset about this? Why am I getting frustrated about this? But it's these quiet little expectations that are already kind of built in into your brain, into the way you think about marriage, coming from your family of origins is one, but then also your influence of your friends, from the culture, from Hollywood, from the media, from sometimes I call it the Cinderella syndrome, where women get married and they think they're going to find their Prince Charming and get married and live happily ever after. And he will just know all the ways to fulfill your emotional needs and fulfill your heart's desires. And that's just not plausible. And so here's a news flash, a spoiler alert, ladies. If you don't know it already, your husband cannot read your mind. It's not possible. As much as we would like them to have this intuitive knowledge of our emotions and an intuitive knowledge of what we need, they don't. They just don't, until that you communicate about it and you talk about it and you walk through these conversations. And then, as we are both like a student of the other, that Pete does learn then how my emotions operate, and I can learn what he needs from me and what his love language is, because that's also another avenue of our expectations and how we receive love from each other. But it's crazy how much your family can influence your expectations, even when you don't realize it. Like sometimes in certain situations, we might be like, all right, I'm going to do this whatever it is differently from our family, and then all of a sudden you're in the moment and you find yourself doing exactly what your family was doing.
Yeah. And first, I'd have to say that if you're watching this, this is actually just water that I'm drinking. I did say that I'm done with coffee for today. The second thing I was going to say is it is disappointing to find out that I am not your Prince Charming. I thought that I had fulfilled that role, but here's the truth. After 25 years, I failed. Apparently, that
That's not what I said.
no, it's funny though. We talk about our first 5 years of marriage a lot because we look back and we're like, boy, we had a lot to learn.
We
we
did.
we just well, and we had such zeal to be that couple that got it all right. And I think my expectation was that marriage just happens. There's not really much you have to do after the wedding. It's just kind of works itself out. And oh boy, did we find out that's not true.
Oh
So
my
we
goodness.
found that no, there's a lot that you need to work on. And, immediately you start getting hit with the realization that you're coming from 2 different worlds, and it's funny that somehow in the dating process, maybe your brain's just not picking up on it. Maybe
It's
you're
that
just
infatuation chemical,
yeah,
right?
you just feel like, that'll be different after we're married, and
Yeah.
guess what? It's not really.
It's not. It's
So
not.
it was necessary for us to have the very difficult conversations, mostly difficult because of myself. I was stubborn and I didn't
That's
believe
not it wasn't just you.
I didn't believe that we needed to do anything to fix our marriage. I thought it was just supposed to work.
And
And
I was the opposite. I thought we had to fix everything. So it was like it was both our faults, but it was like the perfect storm because here I was like perfectionist trying to fix everything. And he was like, whoa, what the heck? Back off, you know?
and it comes from our personalities as
Yeah.
well. We just had this conversation earlier today. I'm not a fan of meetings unless you're going to have a real quick meeting and then do something. That's my
Pizza doer.
yeah. Tenacity is what Patrick Lencioni defines as a working genius, and that's mine. I just want to get stuff done. So meetings for me are very difficult. It's an opportunity for me to become more holy. That's what a meeting is for me. Um, but it's funny because, the moment that Teresa said, maybe we should sit down and talk about this. Ah, yes, talk. That's what we need.
More talk. Well, it's tricky because okay, so not only marriage expectations, but also communication expectations. And you sit down but it was a struggle for me too, because I thought, on the one hand, I thought that everything would be like, he would just, everything would just be magic, right? Like everything would work out magically, like we're heading off into the sunset
Mhm.
and we'd understand each other. And then we just weren't understanding each other. And so then I had frustrations and, we might have talked about this already, but we're talking about the deepest need in a woman and in a man's heart, and when we understand those, we can understand why we get stuck in this kind of catch 22. So for women, well, let's start with men actually. So, Peter, do you know what man's deepest fear is, or what are some guesses people would put out there?
People usually say, well, they're afraid of death. They're afraid of sacrifice, suffering, maybe a disease that causes them to not be able to maybe I don't know, not be able to perform the way that they want to. So a lot of guys are, terrified of getting so sick that they're just kind of uh,
They can't be who they
suffering all the
want.
time. And yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I know the answer, obviously.
What's the answer, honey?
Our deepest need is to feel adequate.
And
And
so the fear would be failure.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's why these marriages where the other is emotionally manipulative in the sense of you're not doing enough for me. It's that constant reminder that I need something from you. that's just a big drain on a man because he wants to be adequate. He
Yeah.
wants to be the man who does enough. And so when the nitpicking happens, and the fussing and the direct "you're not doing enough," that really hurts. That's an insult that hits to the core of a man because that's not who he wants to be. He wants to do enough. And so that was what we were dealing with at the beginning of our marriage. I I just thought marriage would work, and when Teresa said it wasn't, I was like, I took it personally. Like,
Yeah.
what? I thought I was doing enough. Why am I not enough? So we had to work that out too.
And for so that's for men. So the fear of failure and this deep need to feel adequate, to feel up to the task of being a good husband, good father, good whatever profession you have.
Right.
And for women, the deepest fear. It, people when we ask this question, audiences shout out different things. So as you're listening, you can think, okay, what is a woman's deepest fear? Um, some people would say, well, her fear of also not being good enough, her fear of not being able to do, meet the goals that she has in life. Um,
Spiders.
Spiders might be another one. And when it comes down to it, they all kind of roll into this deepest fear of being found unlovable.
Mm,
So her desire then is to be number one in her man's life, to
yeah.
find that, to be have that emotional security, and so not financial, but just this security to know that she's number one in her man's life.
Yeah.
And when she feels that's threatened, and then she kind of like encroaches
Yeah.
in, and maybe she doesn't even realize that, and I didn't even realize I was offending Pete by saying, "Hey, we need to work on these things."
Mm,
I thought it'd be like we're coming together as a team,
right.
and I didn't realize because I was just acting out of my emotion and not really not thinking it through and inadvertently, like offending or causing him to assume that, oh, it's all my fault, and that's not what I meant. But like that's why we had to talk about it, because when she like starts encroaching to try to like get her place back, because be it work or
Yeah.
hang out with other people, that man starts, doing things in other places, then she feels her spot is threatened. But
Yeah.
then when she like encroaches and says, I don't know why you're working so hard, like working so much, or I don't know why you're hanging out with those guys so much, instead of just saying, hey, I need time with you right now, then he feels like, oh, I'm not good enough. My work's not good enough. Nothing's good enough. And so they start pulling away from each other rather than being honest. And that's why you have to unpack these things
Right.
and unpack those expectations.
And, even though the meeting was not what I wanted, that's exactly what was necessary. So, how do you get out of that? Is, well, you've got to talk about it. You've got
Yeah.
to say, hey, I'm not feeling fulfilled. I had different expectations about marriage, and you're not doing those things. And so, let's just talk about, where did these expectations come from? Is it unrealistic for me to believe that my husband would bring me flowers every once in a while? I mean, that would not have been on my radar had we not had the discussion. And guys, if you know that your wife enjoys something every once in a while, you're gonna do it, right? You're gonna say,
Yeah.
"Fine, I'm not a big connoisseur of flowers, but the ladies at the shop, they seem to know what they're doing." So I go in and I say, "Listen, I need flowers for my spouse, and I have no real anniversary or nothing special coming up, just to show her that I love her." And those ladies, they're happy to
They're
put
goo
together
and
a
gaga.
bouquet,
Yeah.
and so it's not like it's a lot of work. And for me, I'm
Yeah.
like, this is something that I can do that helps me to be that man, right? I can be adequate. And then ultimately, I can love my spouse. I don't have, as Teresa said, I can't read her mind. And there was no manual given to us after we got married. So I didn't have a
Yeah.
list of things. Good thing, because I would have just checked it off once. But it was necessary for us to sit down and say, okay, why are we struggling right now? What is the expectation that's not being met? And then again, it's a healthy conversation to say, oh, that's where that expectation came from, because then you as you know yourself, you don't have to judge your spouse's expectations, but you can look at it and say, is this something that I absolutely need, or is this something that's coming from Hollywood, is coming from something from the past that's really not realistic?
And when you start having the conversations, I think part of the beginning and the reason why it's hard is because we have this self-preservation mode, wouldn't you say? Like
Yeah.
we put up defense right away because we feel attacked.
Mm,
And and so then we start looking at we enter into the conversation, at least we did in the beginning. And again, you guys, we're doing this podcast, we're sharing all these things, definitely not to sit here and say, hey, we got it all together.
mm.
Because you'll find out more and more that we really don't.
Imagine what we'll learn the next 25
We really don't. But on the other hand, God is so good and he's so merciful. And we sit here as a witness to God's great love. And that made me lose my train of thought. Oh, so we put up these defenses and we start entering in instead of entering into the conversation thinking, how can I love my spouse more? We enter into the conversation saying, I'm not going to let him think that about me. Like I need to prove that I don't think that. And I need to prove my side of
Right,
it.
right.
And, and so I think even the kind of entering in is part of
Yeah.
like our mode of entering in, right?
Yeah.
Like is super important. Like how are we approaching this conversation?
And
Yeah.
so I can tell you from experience that the first thought I had was, holy cow, if I can't make this work, like we were so in love and I thought for sure that she was the one. And then all of a sudden things aren't going well. I had these lies of, "Yep, you screwed this up and it's gone, it's lost. I don't know what you're gonna do because you can't please the one person in your life that you've married and you're gonna be with for the rest of your life." So that I had all these negative thoughts that go to the extreme, but likely you've had similar thoughts of, "Well, this is gonna suck.
Or
Marriage
they
really is not going to be, the best time of your life because this is happening." Well, just hit the brakes
that's
and
yes.
recognize that, all right, right now it seems really difficult, but it will not always be this way. And that's why you have to just stop and say, hey, uh, it seems that we've reached a rough part. Can we just hit the brakes and talk about why? And yeah, it's uncomfortable. And yeah, it means that you have to sit and talk about it. And that for guys like me, that's uncomfortable. But the reality is, and we heard this on, oh gosh, that psychologist,
Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson, thank you. He mentioned that even though the conversation is difficult, wouldn't it be worth it if you knew that the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is going to be that much easier if
Because
you
of the
have
hard
this
conversation.
conversation now? And so that's
And
what we did. We dove in and we said, all right, let's do a weekly check-in. We call it date night, and let's just talk about how things are going. And those are the conversations that need to be had. Is so what is the expectation that you came with? Because here's my expectation. And then all of a sudden you're on the same wavelength. You're on the same path and you at least know what the other is thinking. And then you can start to adjust and start to say, hey, I didn't know the expectation of getting flowers. I don't want
he
to
got me
throw
plants.
I don't want to throw my father under the bus, but I mentioned before we grew up on a farm. My father didn't pick flowers and bring them to mom. He didn't stop on the way home and pick up a bouquet of flowers. And so I didn't have that to kind of inform me as this is what
Yeah.
a man does for his bride. And so I needed to learn. So the only way I could learn is to know that, hey, this is something that she enjoys. So
Yes, flowers and not potted,
houseplants.
not house plants, even though they're more useful. But
The
obviously
efficiency factor, they're cheaper, they last longer, they produce.
they cause stress because I do not have a green thumb and I will most likely forget to water them and then they will die and he'll be like, why did you kill my love plant?
Right. Yeah.
No, but it's funny because we have these. All right, we were talking about family of origins informing our marriage expectations, but also like the culture and even just like attitudes towards life too. Like as you're talking about like these negative voices in your head,
Mm,
I was thinking of that movie Big Daddy where he throws that stick and the guy like wipes out or doesn't wipe out and he's like, "You suck, you suck, you suck." I'm like, why did those stupid things get stuck in our head? Like when we do something or when something's going
right,
wrong,
right,
it's like Satan is saying that to us. You suck, you suck.
right.
You're terrible. You're never gonna figure this out. Your marriage is awful. And
Mm,
I think that's why it's so good to have like for us the following the rule means so we were part of this rediscovery St. John Paul II's rule for
mm,
married couple groups. And when you're in a married couple group, you have this beautiful blessing of knowing that you're not alone
yeah.
and knowing that other people have similar struggles.
Yeah, the other couples, they suck too.
Are we gonna have to like edit out that word? No, you all know we're okay. Um, but no, but it's like what we have to remember is like whatever it is, it Satan will try to make it a wedge in between you, and
Yeah,
he will try to pit you against each other. And what you have to work so hard to do is to take, if once you feel this kind of growing invisible wedge between
right,
you,
right.
you have to like put on the brakes and like mentally take that thing, whatever it is, even if it's attached to one of you, but like take it and put it out in front of you and
Mhm,
imagine yourselves standing side by side and
right.
conquering it together. So one of the things, so we're talking about marriage expectations, but also like things from our past can form our attitudes towards marriage and inhibit our expectations maybe. So
Mm,
I had an eating disorder in junior high, and so I grew up kind of with this skewed view of body images and whatnot, my own body image value, and God
mhm.
has worked and healed a lot with me, and I'm so blessed that God is merciful and can bring great healing and freedom, which I have now. But when I brought this kind of negative thing into our marriage, and so that inhibited me from really freely entering into intimacy, and so that became a struggle. It was my fault, really. It was my burden, but Pete was so kind. Like we were able to take it on together, right? And like it not be something that like separated us, but we approached it together and he supported me in my pursuit of healing. But that could have definitely been a huge thing that just drove a wedge that he couldn't understand because he didn't go through it. You know what I mean? Like, or he could have just been like, well, you figured out and backed off.
Mm.
But he didn't. He engaged and he embraced it, even though it was definitely something like that I brought in.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that is an uncomfortable conversation, and that's why we need to have those frequent conversations. That's why we always say date night, and this doesn't mean that you go out once a week. We hardly ever
Who's
go out.
got money for that?
I don't remember the last time we've gone out, but it means that you've got time, and our kids now are very familiar. It's Thursday night, it's on our calendar. It just means that the older ones put the little ones to bed and mom and dad have time alone.
Yeah.
And that's our time to check in and say, "Hey, how's it going? What are the things that are on your mind?" And in particular, these deeper things need to be brought out for healing to occur. Now, I had my own problems growing up. I was introduced to pornography at a very young age, way too young for anyone. And it was something that continually informed my view of sexuality. Obviously, that's a bad way to enter into marriage, right? Is to have that. And then combine that with her eating disorder. It was the perfect storm. But
Yeah.
if we didn't
And
admit to it
yeah.
and talk about it immediately, it would have been that storm that wiped us out,
Satan
really,
wanted to use it to destroy us, but God used it for his greater glory.
and allowed the healing to happen. And yeah, I I never would have brought it up. I thought it would be something that I could hide, but thankfully, just through God's grace, I recognize that no, this is something that you need to bring up before marriage,
Yeah.
and that ended up being a blessing. I really felt like that would be one of our last conversations, because
Aw.
I thought that
He thought I'd call off the wedding.
that she would be so disappointed that this guy who professed to be this great Catholic, had done such horrible things, and I continued to struggle at the time, so I thought, "Yeah, she wants Prince Charming. She wants somebody who has self-control, and this just smacks of weakness," and so I thought for sure that she would leave. Actually, I think I, uh, asked her, if she wanted to, and said, "I I completely understand," because at that time, again, those thoughts in my head were, "Yeah, you're a weak man, and nobody, you don't deserve her, and she certainly deserves better," and so there were all these negative thoughts that I, had back then, and it was an opportunity for her to share her love with me, which then allowed me to start to heal, and obviously not a perfect man, and I still have these doubts of my, ability or my worthiness, but she was there to profess her love even knowing all of that. Isn't that who God is?
Yeah. And you're better than Prince Charming, babe. No, but it's true because we all have failings and we all have sins, and we all need to ask for forgiveness from each
Mm,
other and from God. And isn't the perfect spouse the one who continually asks for forgiveness,
mm,
who continually um, seeks to be a better person from one day to the next day to the next day? And in my mind, at that moment when he was so open and so vulnerable, and I'm getting emotional again, so, and I still don't have Kleenex. Yeah, well,
it's
I have to
supposed to
put that
be
on my bullet point
it's
of
supposed to
preparing
be
for the
a
podcast.
happy podcast.
Right. Joyful, joyful. Okay. Um, no, but when he was vulnerable and like was basically ripping his heart open and showing me what he considered the worst part of himself and saying, "Here I am. Don't you want to just run away?" I'm like,
Mm,
"What? No. Like this is who I want to love. This is
mm,
who I want to embrace and get to know and walk this journey of life with, because guess what? I've got crap too."
yeah,
And we all do. We all have this brokenness. Um with that said, I also want to say that we're going to put in the show notes, if you or someone you know is struggling with pornography, or if has these struggles in their marriage, or maybe you're listening, you're engaged, or you're thinking of or dating, and thinking about getting married, that there are some really helpful tools out there to
mhm,
give you the freedom that you deserve, because the world entraps us and entraps good men and good
mm,
women into these addictions and sexual addictions. And that's not who you are. Your identity is found as a child of God.
mm.
And there is hope and there is freedom. And you do have a pure heart, and that is how God made you. So we're definitely going to put some of those resources in our notes for you.
And you mentioned forgiveness, and thinking back, we were engaged to be married, and I was convicted that she needs to know, and the way that I brought it wasn't, "I have this issue, you'll just need to deal with." It was, I'm sharing this with you because it's part of my past, and unfortunately, it's still something that I struggle with, but I'm sorry, and I never meant for it to hurt you. And again, like her love for me at that moment, it blew me away because I didn't think it was possible. I think I had so much self-loathing that I didn't think anyone could love me, but she did, and so that's kind of how you get out of this struggle. So sometimes we get into this. Disillusionment because of our expectations, and we just feel like, ugh, this is not what I signed up for. But the way you get out is by first talking about it, as
Yeah.
we said, but then two, offering your forgiveness and asking for forgiveness, and to do that repeatedly, because as we said, it's it's not just a one-time thing. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to hurt each other, even though we don't mean to. But to be freely open to asking for forgiveness and receiving the other's forgiveness, it's very important for a healthy relationship.
And to have a wonderful marriage, it's two imperfect people
Mm,
who say, I love you and I forgive you
mm,
over and over and over and over.
yeah.
One of our mottos in the WCI on the back of our dialogue journals, it says, love, forgive, repeat. um, Over and over. And it really, like, honestly, like that Cinderella syndrome would say that you would never have to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you because life is perfect.
Mm,
But that's not human reality. That's not who we are as persons. And although we don't want to hurt each other, and hopefully, like what we do would be less and less, and maybe something inadvertently, like even in those first years too of like our communication, we were hurting each other, and we didn't want to. We we just weren't finding a way forward,
yeah.
and communication is hard when you have all this baggage of your expectations. So one thing that is good to do when you're trying to understand, okay, maybe there are certain things. Last week we talked about 5 tips of finding joy in the journey, and one of those things, this tip number 2 that Father Sam gave us, was paying attention to where it stings,
Mm,
right? Paying attention to kind of like that, where you're feeling frustrated, because maybe that's where God wants to work on you. So
mm,
I would say let's go back to that. So your challenge for this week then would be to go back to that. Okay, where does it sting? Let's pay attention to that
mhm,
and maybe unpack and be like, what expectation was I having here that's not being met? Or what's below the surface here, of what am I expecting in our marriage that's not quite being fulfilled? And maybe I'm not even voicing it. And that's the problem too, is like I haven't communicated. And all of a sudden I'm being, I've learned to be very direct about what I would like for my birthdays. um, because in the past I'd be like hoping that he would know, that Pete would like figure out that
mm,
this is what I'd want for my birthdays. And then I'd have times where I'd like be slightly disappointed. And now I just realized, like, if I'm, and he's like, how can I read your mind? Right. Like, so I had to slowly learn that tip, right? Of that he can't read my mind, and being able to voice it. Because how can your spouse love you if you don't communicate what that need is that you
right.
have in your heart?
Right. And as you go through that exercise, obviously there's going to be pains there because that's kind of what you're trying to do is to point to where it hurts, to recognize that forgiveness is key to a deep love. And the example we will give, just we couldn't think of a very
A better one.
a pertinent one for marriage, but the one that came to mind was our patron saint, Saint John Paul II. After he was shot, so this was 1981. The assassin tried to kill JP2, and after he healed, he was able to go to the prison cell and ask forgiveness, or sorry, to forgive the would-be assassin. And it, it's just such a great example of who we're meant to be.
Yeah.
Like, here's a man that didn't know him, didn't care, just wanted to end his life, and JP2 forgave him. And so it's necessary for us, not because we're Catholic and you're supposed to forgive, but it's also necessary for our own good to be able to let go of the pain that was associated with that. So it's not to say this is a psychological thing that JP2 did it only so that he could sleep
No.
well at night, but no, it's a both and. So we do so because we're asked to by Christ himself to forgive others, those that have trespassed us, but it's also good for us to let go and to say, I can't carry all of this baggage. I have to forgive you for my own good as well.
Right, because it's forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying, "Oh, that's okay.
Right.
Oh, that's all right. That wasn't a big deal." No, it was a big deal. That's why it needs to be forgiven, okay? So you're not saying that that action is justified or allowed in any way. What you're saying is, I'm not going to let this eat me up, and I'm giving judgment to God, and I'm letting it go. Because when we hold on to that forgiveness, it's like holding your own breath and hoping the other person, so
Suffocates.
yeah, passes out, right? And that's only damaging you. And when we let go, and when we say, I forgive you for whatever hurt, you give yourself the gift of freedom, as much as being a blessing to that person, but they might not even appreciate it. I mean, well, we're talking about spouses here, so hopefully so, but other people in your life too, they might not. It doesn't matter. Actually, that forgiveness is healing you as well,
Mm.
and giving you such freedom and joy that you don't have to carry that anymore. That's not who you are. That hurt or that thing does not define you. Only Christ's love and his love for you defines you.
And I know there are times that I've gone to Teresa and said, would you please forgive me for this? And she'll say, but you've already asked forgiveness. But sometimes there are layers, and
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know, we still hold on to something, or we didn't believe it, or whatever it is. So don't be afraid to ask again. And it seems foolish because I know you said you forgive me, but I don't know. I still have this. And those are very real moments of who we are. I told you, we have these self doubts, these voices in our head. So just get it out and say, listen, I must still be holding on to something because you know how we're supposed to look for that place where it hurts? Well, it still does. So
Yeah.
maybe I still need to ask forgiveness and so would you forgive me?
And sometimes there's layers of forgiving as well as this asking for forgiveness. So, um, the sacrament of confession is great
Mm,
because not only does God give you the grace of Him forgiving your sins, but He also gives you the grace to forgive others in that sacrament. I don't know if you guys knew that, but when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Because,
another reason to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Beautiful. All right.
So thank you guys so much for joining us again. And we look forward to chatting with you next week. In the meantime, go ahead and start unpacking those things and let us know what you think. Let us know your thoughts. If you have any prayer intentions, we'd love to hold those in prayer as well. Thank you so much.
God bless.